Good afternoon. I'm Brandon Pasley, YWCA's Vice President of Compliance and Operations, and it is my honor to welcome you all to our 18th annual Women Who Care Share Luncheon. We are thrilled to have such a full room today. Look at yourselves. Fantastic. I am here to introduce our MC, Jerry Askins. Jerry dedicated over 30 years of her life to public service in Oklahoma, making an impact across the state. During her career, she earned the rare distinction of serving in all three branches of state government, holding roles that ranged from judge to legislator to lieutenant governor. After a remarkable career marked by these significant contributions, Jerry officially retired last year, leaving behind a legacy of leadership and dedication to the people of Oklahoma. Following her retirement, Jerry has remained deeply committed to serving in our state. She stepped in as the interim president of Cameron University, guiding the institution through an important transition, and she now serves as the interim city attorney for the city of Lawton. Above all, we are especially grateful for her ongoing role as a steadfast friend and a supporter of YWCA Oklahoma City. Please welcome me in joining to the stage, Jerry Askins.
Thank you, Brandon. It is truly inspiring to look at and see this room filled with so many familiar faces, but it's even more exciting to see so many of you who are truly here for the first time at this luncheon. Your presence here today is a powerful show of support for survivors seeking safety, healing, and hope through the YWCA's programs. This event thrives because of people like you, people who choose to invest their time, resources, and compassion into ending domestic sexual violence and stalking in our community and our state. We are grateful to stand alongside you as we work together to break the cycle of violence in Oklahoma. As we begin, there are a few group of supporters we would like to recognize. Would all of our public elected officials, judges, law enforcement, first responders who are joining us today, please stand so that we may recognize you as a group. Would the YWCA Board of Directors and the YWCA staff who are in the room please stand so we can thank you for all the support you regularly provide the agency. All right, now we would like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible. Changing the rules, so I'm going to ask you to hold your applause until we finish at the end. Our title sponsor, Bank of Oklahoma. Our leadership sponsor, Shelley and Gant Lamberts. Our survivor sponsors, MidFirst Bank and One Heartbeat Foundation. Our empowerment sponsors, Bank First, DeLisi Brothers, Selena Royalty, Vicki and Bob Howard. Our hope sponsors, Arca Continental Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, Arvest Bank, Ricker Graydon, First United Bank, and Rainey Walker. And a thank you to the ones who help wrap our event in holiday cheer, our decor sponsors, eVentures. This event would not be possible without all of your support. Thank you so much. Many of you have already seen the details about our monthly donor drawing. This year's prize is truly unforgettable. One lucky winner will receive 4 tickets for a breathtaking hot air balloon ride and $200 in Bourbon Street Cafe gift cards. I would suggest using the gift cards after the balloon ride. This is the perfect way to celebrate once you are back on solid ground. If you have never been on a hot air balloon ride, you don't know what you're missing. It's one of my favorite things, sailing through the air, really gone with the wind, so to speak. The only noise you hear is the whoosh, whoosh of the propane heater as it fills the balloon, the helium. Think of a double date or a family adventure or a girls' outing or best friends outing and that once-in-a-lifetime experience that you'll be talking about for years. This incredible package is generously provided by Oklahoma Chiropractic. Please sign up as a monthly donor at $30 or more per month for your chance to win. Now, I would like to welcome YWCA's President and CEO, Christy Chandler, to the stage.
Hello. Whoever wins the hot air balloon ride, please invite me so I can cheer you on from the ground as you land. Good afternoon, and welcome to Women Who Care Share. I'm Christy Chandler, CEO at YWCA Oklahoma City, and as usual, it's an honor to be in the same space with you. Yesterday was Giving Tuesday, and like many of you, I spent the day watching our community show up for nonprofits they love. It was inspiring, not just the generosity, but the way people showed up for missions they hold close with such conviction. That same spirit is in this room today, and it's what sustains organizations like ours. Over the last year in this role, I've been blessed by concern, compliments, and questions of people in the community. 3 specifically that I want to share with you. I didn't know about the YWCA. How long have you been around? How are you moving the needle on domestic and sexual violence? This work seems so heavy. What keeps you anchored? Today, I want to highlight the answers to all 3 of those, because the answers are the reasons this organization matters and the reason this room is so important. At YWCA Oklahoma City, we have been identifying and responding to the needs of women and children in this community since 1907, when 600 charter members came together with an annual budget of $6,888.70, all raised by this community. By 1910, we were already offering employment and social services, not because there were grants or systems in place that inspired them, but because women saw what other women needed and decided to act. Fast forward to the 1970s, I hear it was a great decade, when the country finally began acknowledging domestic violence and sexual assault as public issues, and then you can see how we keep moving the needle. In 1974, we opened a Women's Resource Center, launching Oklahoma County's first 24-hour sexual assault hotline and sexual assault counseling. 1 year later, in 1975, we added the Battered Women's Crisis Hotline and started helping women navigate violence, divorce, widowhood, career transitions, and personal safety. By 1979, we opened Passageway, the first domestic violence shelter in this city. And even then, more than 450 women and children were turned away because we did not have the space to match the need. The story of YWCA is consistent. When a need shows up in the lives of women and children in Oklahoma County, we respond. And we've been doing that for 117 years. So how do we move the needle today? By continuing the work the women before us built with the same blend of clarity, courage, and respectful audacity that this work has always demanded. Last year, we answered 8,885 hotline calls. We provided safe refuge for 217 adults and 207 children. One unique thing about us is we have the state's only teen advocacy program, and we supported 96 teens who are survivors with individualized care. And we kept 22 dogs, 9 cats, and 1 bunny safely with their families, because pets are family too. What anchors me in this work? What brings me and my YWCA colleagues back to our duty stations every day? It's simple: survivor bravery and our rich expertise together. Survivors show courage long before they ever call us or stop in. They're navigating coercive control, isolation, surveillance, financial entrapment, and impossible decisions. And when they reach out, they meet staff whose knowledge has been passed down, refined, and strengthened for over 5 decades. That combination is why I wake up anchored every day, because I see what happens when bravery meets someone who knows how to help. With that, it's on my heart to take a moment and honor the people in this room who reflect that story of our mission. Survivors, staff, volunteers, board members, past and present. You're very likely sitting next to them at your table. You are the reason we do this work, the reason this organization has endured, and the reason people in crisis have always had a place to turn. Thank you for your courage and your relentless spirit. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, and I've been practicing her name, so I say it like it's my own. Dr. Christine Marie Cocchiola is a coercive control educator, speaker, clinician, coach, and survivor. She is a tenured college professor teaching social work for the last 20 years and has been a social justice advocate since she was 19, volunteering at places like YWCA, agencies that help survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Dr. C supports protective parents navigating coercive control, as well as professional training for individuals seeking education regarding coercive control advocacy. We are thrilled to have her here to talk with us about domestic violence through the lens of her own clinical expertise, research, and personal experiences. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christine Marie Cocchiola to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the YWCA of Oklahoma City. Christy stole a little bit of my thunder because my first employment, my first job as an advocate was at a YWCA. So thank you, CEO Christy Chandler, for inviting me to speak on coercive control and to share my story as a victim and a survivor and a protective parent. Sammy, Grega, wherever you are, wave to me. I hope you're around. You've been wonderful to work with on this collaboration. Thank you so much. I began my work, as Christy explained, at the age of 19, becoming a certified domestic violence, sexual assault crisis counselor for a local umbrella agency. My training occurred every Saturday at a YWCA in Waterbury, Connecticut, where Safe Haven was housed, an umbrella agency for the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I didn't realize then that the advocate I hoped to be, someone who could prevent child abuse and family violence, was the exact advocate I would desperately need years later. I would never find that advocate for myself. Eventually, I would need to become her for myself, and most importantly, for my children. My path into this work was deeply personal. Someone I cared about had been a victim of abuse as a child, sexual abuse, and I struggled to understand how such a horrific problem could even exist in our world. More than anything, I wanted to stop perpetrators from harming our most vulnerable, children. Little did I know that 20 years later, I would find myself advocating for my own children against the very type of predator I had spent my career fighting. At 20, while studying to become a teacher, Safe Haven asked me to speak on the steps of City Hall for the White Ribbon Campaign, advocating for protections against child pornography. This was 1988. Yes, 1988. This was well before the internet opened the floodgates for perpetrators to have access to our children. It should have been a proud moment for me. I think I was proud. The local newspaper covered the event, fellow advocates were present, and my boyfriend was in the audience on that cold November day. That boyfriend would later become my husband and the father of my children. Looking back, I should have paid attention to his reaction that day. Was he proud of me? I wasn't sure. I recall feeling like he seemed uncomfortable with the topic of child sexual abuse and child pornography. He wasn't enthusiastic about the event itself. He was more enthusiastic about spending time with me after. What ended up happening is a nightmare many protective parents live with. Many of us, virtually all of us, go into these relationships with assuming the best intentions of others. But what if someone's intention isn't benevolent? What if it's malevolent? What if their intention is to coerce and control us, to dominate? And then when we attempt to escape, when we attempt to disengage from the relationship in any way, they exert further harm and may even coerce systems and perhaps our children to believe that we are unstable, to hurt us in the most profound way, to rob us and take away our children or turn our children against us. The reality is most abuse does not start off physical, and physical violence is not the defining characteristic of abuse. Abuse often starts off with tactics even the most astute of us may miss. Psychological, such as gaslighting, manipulation, intimidation, and isolation. It is a grooming process, and like cult leaders, abusers intentionally and systematically erode a victim's autonomy, their agency. Verbal assaults and stalking are par for the course. I often say to my clients, if you think you're being stalked, you are. Violence, if it occurs, often happens when the abuser is losing their grip on the victim. All victims suffer financial abuse, and if engaged in legal proceedings, vexatious litigation always occurs. And then, of course, the most heartbreaking, the weaponization of children. The term coercive control was coined in 1982 by social worker Susan Schechter and propelled into the cultural lexicon by sociologist Dr. Evan Stark. With his seminal book, Coercive Control, How Men Entrap Women in Personal Life. It was a paradigm shift. understanding that due to patriarchal norms, women and children suffer domination in abusive situations. This is not to say that men don't suffer abuse, but the reality is that our society is built upon those who have the most power and control. In general, across all systems, men have more power and control. It's a sad statement when there is a defense to that statement. I don't often understand that. It seems to me that we have to understand that women and children are our most vulnerable. As Dr. Stark stated, coercive control is like carpenter ants devouring the foundation of a house. You don't even know it's happening until it's too late. Yet all too often we ask victims why they stayed, rather than, how can we help you escape? I was fortunate enough to have Dr. Stark on my committee for my doctoral candidacy. Susan, by the way, Susan Schechter, was one of the first to acknowledge the intersection between domestic abuse and child abuse. On a societal level, coercive control underlies oppressive dynamics used against all marginalized populations, such as with racism, sexism, and human trafficking. On an individual level, behind closed doors, current research shows that women and children suffer in coercively controlling relationships most often. 35% of women suffer violence in their lifetime. Let's take a moment here. 35% of women suffer violence in their lifetime. What of all the women who are suffering other forms of abuse that are not violent? And what of all the children living in those family systems? This, to me, seems like an integral understanding that we need the systems to understand. So now what we know is to say that domestic abuse and child abuse are siloed issues is absolutely preposterous. They are not siloed. Children living in these family systems are suffering, not witnesses of, suffering coercive control. We have the image that only uneducated individuals living in poverty experience abuse. This could not be farther from the truth. Abusers show up as charlatans. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. They have particular traits that are disordered, traits that most often do not change with therapy and other interventions. Better intervention programs don't work for many of these people. Their coping mechanisms require them to exert power and control over others. As a matter of fact, we tell victims to leave all the time. Yet research affirms that a victim is most at risk at the moment they attempt to escape. A research study of over 231 victims over 18 months found that 1/5 of these female victims were murdered within 2 days of getting a restraining order. The most savvy of perpetrators know enough not to use physical violence until they do. Research out of the UK, completed by Jane Monckton-Smith, demonstrates that femicides and filicides, the murder of our children, are directly correlated to a pattern of coercion and control. These abusers are hiding in plain sight. There are our guidance counselors, our doctors, our plumbers, our politicians, our lawyers, and our truck drivers. These individuals, some call them narcissistic abusers, I call them coercive controllers, and when they are parents, predatory parents, are born with these pathological traits and often burdened with intense shame. And as a result of their own childhood experience, they try to cover that up. In other words, they are born with a propensity to exert power and control over others. As Gabor Mate explains, the ability to be authentic is what drives attachment. Children growing up in abusive homes, whether the abuse is overt, with physical violence, sexual violence, etc., or covert, are often lacking a fortified, secured attachment with a primary protective parent. If born with these particular character traits, more compromised in adversity, these individuals work diligently to hide their shortcomings by ensuring they're more powerful than those around them. While they can perpetrate this dynamic anywhere, it plays out most often in intimate relationships where they can be most powerful and don't have to perform up to society's standards. In countless subtle ways, these individuals exert coercion and control using various strategies, including, but not limited to, psychological abuse. 99% of victims suffer some form of financial abuse. Then, typically, when the victim attempts to escape, the coercive control that may have been subtle often intensifies. We see this over and over again. It gets worse, yet we tell victims to leave, or we ask why they haven't left. The legal system becomes a great vehicle for abuse. As research affirms, abusers are drawn towards conflict. A research study out of 2019 proves this. We knew this. Family court becomes the perfect stage. This is the world we're living in. A world where money and power are used to inflict harm via systems. Where victims are framed. A world where victims are not believed and often pathologized. A world where if this abuse was occurring by a stranger, it would be considered a crime. A world where there is a lack of understanding of how coercive control is inflicted onto everyone in the family system, including those cute fur babies you were referring to. A world where a child's attachment may be severed from their protective parent simply because we believe children need two parents. I have parents losing custody every day when they attempt to show the court their children are unsafe. A world where we fail to recognize that a child's voice may actually be conditioning by the predatory parent, forcing estrangement, alienation as an abuse tactic. As feminist psychologists in the early 70s told us, the human condition can easily be manipulated when so much is at stake. Children rely on their parents for safety, but what if their parent is unsafe and exerting power over them to the point where they cannot be their authentic selves? They're not able to regulate their behaviors in a safe space. And so, the intergenerational trauma continues. We live in a world where children are forced into custodial time with the abusive parent, whether they have a bruise or not, and it's why I wrote the book, Every Moment of Every Day. A world where abusive parents can take custody from a protective parent by making false claims against them. A world where abusers become emboldened by the systems. They're able to manipulate the systems. New research out of February 2024, sometimes I go a little rogue here. New research out of February 2024 talks about harmful individuals having 4 harmful traits. It's called the dark tetrad. It's narcissism, Machiavellianism, the ability to manipulate everyone and systems, psychopathy, willingness to break the law. Every single one of our clients, the abuser was breaking the law well before we knew it. And sadly, the 4th one is sadism, wanting to inflict harm, needing to exact revenge. We haven't correlated this to abusers, but I can tell you every single one of my clients is dealing with that pathology. And they show up in court, and no one believes that they could be an abuser. Or they're colluding with the court, sadly. It's all so unbelievable. Ask someone who hasn't experienced this, and they'll think every parent deserves to share time with their child. Or mothers lie about abuse, yet research shows that mothers lie less than 3% of the time. Or there must be a reason for the judge to have moved custody. Or it cannot be true that the therapist reprimanded your child for being afraid of the abuser. I hear that every week. I'm a clinician. I'm a therapist, and I hear of therapists who are getting angry with children for being rude towards their abusive parent. Or some people might say to you when your teen is estranged from you, they're just being teenagers. They'll get over it. There must be some reason why your child doesn't speak to you. Oh, I can think of a reason. There's one reason. There's a predatory parent engaged in the process. It's all so unbelievable, as I said, yet even Oprah discussed some of this on a recent episode of her podcast, Estrangement, she talked about, exploring how many young people are claiming they're done with their toxic parents. This episode and this idea of estrangement is something myself and many of my clients have been triggered by, because sometimes being estranged from a harmful parent is appropriate, and then other times, like virtually all of my clients, the estrangement masks abuse, and the child doesn't even know it. The sad part, this lack of awareness leads to a failure to protect the physical and psychological safety of not only adult victims, but of course our children. Children living in these homes aren't just witnesses, as I said earlier. They're experiencing abuse firsthand, even if it's not a slap across the face. Imagine it's like 1,000 paper cuts. Coercive controllers are drawn to people who are unwittingly easier to exploit than others, no matter how confident and secure they may be. I call these victims perfect prey, the name of my podcast too. These people tend to score high in agreeableness and conscientiousness from the Big 5 personality test. How many people in here have taken the Big 5 personality test? You might want to take it. You're probably going to find that most of the people in this room, you're a giver in relationships, you're loyal to a fault, highly optimistic, you rate high in agreeableness and conscientiousness. Abusers rate low in agreeableness, and they rate very high in neuroticism. Now, we all know who they get neurotic about, right? Hyper-focused on the victim. So, these people, again, as I said, they tend to rate very high in this neuroticism. And the characteristics of abusers, again, affirm that these people are dangerous, but they don't perform as dangerous in front of everyone else. Additionally, research shows that when victims present their experiences of abuse to family courts, they are disbelieved at a rate of about 55%. Disbelieved of their own abuse. When they share that they have witnessed and or there's been reports of their children being physically abused, they are disbelieved at a rate of about 73%. And sexual abuse, a rate of 85% disbelieved. Now, I am talking about cases where we have evidence. Virtually, since January, I've probably had about 25 cases alone where mothers have come forward complaining about their children having numerous infections. The PCP makes a report. The mother's told to get a restraining order. She goes to court. The judge flips custody. The mother is called an alienator. She is told that she is fabricating the story, even though we have evidence. Now, this may sound like to you like an anomaly. I'm telling you, 25 cases since January. I know it's November, but seriously, from January to March, it was probably 13. One after the other of these types of cases. As I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this work since the age of 19. I worked in child welfare. I was a CASA volunteer. I'm a therapist. I've been teaching social work and educating students on the topic of domestic abuse for over 22 years. Sorry, I lost my page. Hang on a second. Even so, I didn't recognize the telltale signs of abuse in my relationship because I, like so many people working in the field, was using the violent incident model to determine abuse. Yet we know the psychological tactics of coercive control may in fact be more harmful than physical abuse. You know why? Because with physical abuse, nobody questions you. Everybody believes you. Yet they don't believe you when you're a mother saying it's happened to your children. How do you explain something even you can't describe? Just like many of my clients, I was gaslit by therapists saying that my anxiety was the problem or I needed to get over the fact that he had had an affair. My concerns about rising contempt, particularly with my daughter, were dismissed. She was the reason I finally broke the trauma bond with the abuser and left for good. It was my 5th attempt. Most victims take numerous attempts to escape. Yes, victims become bonded to their abusers. Our brain actually has a neurological response. So when we see victims go back and forth, and we start blaming them, why are they doing this? We have to understand the brain is actually engaged in that process. Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, and other hormones do fortify a trauma bond. And victims become trauma bonded to their abusers, as do the children. I was raised in a tight-knit family with traditional values. My parents have been life partners who modeled kindness and love toward one another. 64 years together last month. I never learned what the red flags of an abusive relationship are, and most of us aren't taught these signs. My parents, strong in their religious beliefs, used to say, God doesn't make junk. But the reality is, the world is full of people who are Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And when I went for a jog with my brother at age 16, I met one of them. I now know the extreme declarations of affection he interspersed between more coercive behaviors were his version of love bombing, a common way abusers gain control by confusing victims and enhancing the trauma bond. Of course, now I can see all the red flags. Did you know love bombing is now part of coercive control legislation in the UK? Yep. It is, as of 2023. And we have now, and by the way, the UK is where it is criminalized. It is actually a criminal offense to exert coercion and control over someone. The US is far behind. I mean, we are so far behind. We now have codified coercive control as a form of domestic abuse. I don't even like this wording because it's not a form of domestic abuse. It's the underpinning of it all. That's how abusers integrate all of their abuses. And so in the United States, we now, as I said, have 9 states that have codified it. Can you imagine that we have 41 states requiring someone to have physical evidence of abuse in order to get a restraining order? By the time it's gotten physical, there is significant risk at place, right? When we know it is not a form of domestic abuse, again, as I said, it is the underpinning of it all. Physical evidence is not the defining characteristic. A pattern of coercion and control is the defining characteristic. Eventually, my boyfriend and I married and had 2 children. The arrival of children in a coercively controlling relationship adds a complicated abuse accelerant. Abusers are always authoritarian in their behaviors, dominating. However, looking through the coercive control lens, we can see that this domination does not have to come across as scary. Don't get me wrong, everyone in the family system knows who's in charge. Everyone is regulating their behaviors, but savvy abusers know that you get more bees with honey. And like a cult leader, they are constantly grooming and, of course, grooming the children. The trauma bond gets fortified. This was the predatory parent in my home and the predatory parent in many of the homes of the victims I support. It's also easy to align with someone who is offering you more freedom and is often neglectful in their parenting. I discussed this in one of my episodes of my podcast. It's called The Lure of Tweens and Teens. Abusers will have like an authoritarian, overtly authoritarian style oftentimes, and then once the kids reach tweens and teens, they kind of turn a little more permissive because they realize that the last thing the victim wants is for maybe her child to have a phone at 8 years old, right? Or to be able to stay out till midnight with a group of friends. So they start to counter-parent in ways that are permissive, and really what it's about is retaining control. So the message is, I love you if you do this. It's conditional, and children know this. The abuser's omnipotence is felt throughout the home, leaving everyone unable to express their fear because there's no room for negotiation. An abuser's conditional love leaves children in a compromised state, confused and torn. My children learned I was disempowered in my home, aligned with the parent who had more power and gave them what they wanted. His conditional love, tied in with counterparenting, again, leaves children in a state of unknowing. Dr. Stark said that. It's like an unknowing of what we should know, right? Empowering victims to have agency, even as they focus on maintaining safety, should be everyone's #1 goal. What I really needed, myself, an educator on the topic of abuse and a therapist, was someone who helped me recognize that I was experiencing abuse. I could see it with my own clients and as an advocate, however, I couldn't see it in the relationship. Don't get me wrong, I knew something was off. I was anxious. I was overwhelmed, particularly when it came to co-parenting, which became counterparenting, and wanting to spend time with family and friends. Sometimes arguments would result in verbal assaults. I sometimes didn't behave the way I liked. Out-of-character behavior is something that we see in victims. I often say that when you've been trapped over and over again and your autonomy has been diminished, at some point, you're going to defend yourself. Some people call that mutual abuse or reactive abuse. That's self-defense. After years, months, weeks, days of being worn down, eventually at some point you are going to, boom, come back. And you are not going to be within character. It's out of character for you to behave that way. I often ask the therapist when I'm training them, ask yourself this question. I had one therapist, I'm going a little rogue here, sorry. I had one therapist who came in and she had been seeing a couple for 4 years. And she's like, but she's like, I don't know who the abuser is. Like, I feel like they're abusing each other. And I said, well, what's the foundation of the relationship here? Like, who at the very core, the very beginning of the relationship began to diminish the other person? It's not hard to tell. If you look really deep into the relationship dynamics, you can see that there was always inequality. One person had more power than the other person. That person is the person who's turning the children against the protective parent. That person is the person who's harmful. Don't see couples for 4 years, by the way. No. If we can't fix them in a few months, they're not willing to be fixed. Someone's not willing to be fixed, right? So, experts call all of this psychological warfare. The United Nations has called it intimate terrorism when a victim is trapped in a relationship, often unknowingly. It is not exaggerative to call it entrapment. Of course, when financial extremes come into play, it is entrapment. It's something Albert Biderman researched during the Korean War. Prisoners of war would align with their oppressors. The intermittent reinforcement, the good with the bad, the fear of what would come next, even grown military men would be acquiescing to their oppressors. Every single one of them acquiesced to their oppressors when he did this research in 1957. When I did finally escape, I learned from my daughter that their father had been telling them for years that I was the cheater, not him, and that I couldn't be trusted. I'm worried about your mom, he would say. It would all come across as worry and concern. I'm worried about your mom, he would say. If she'd just take her medication, all would be okay. Or, she's crazy. Oh, there she goes again, right? As happens with so many children, mine were robbed of their sense of agency and the ability to think critically about the dynamics they were experiencing. Their bodies knew something was wrong, but I did my best to ensure they didn't feel the pain. And this is kind of problematic because we do our best to protect our children, but in that we wonder why they don't recognize the signs of abuse. It's like a disintegrated intuition. We take away what their body is telling them because we want so badly to have a normal family, home, etc. We don't want to call the police, right? I believe most abusers set up their relationship with children in the manner from the beginning. On my social media channels, I openly share my conviction that coercive controllers strategically sow the seeds of doubt and division between family members from day one. This protects the abuser in case the victim ever does decide to escape. The children's sense of reality is totally diminished. My own children later shared their father used to tell them I loved one of them more than the other while offering examples to prove his point. These statements, triangulation, functioned as another tactic toward the malicious fracturing of attachment with me. When I filed for divorce the second time, my partner told me the children wouldn't live with me. Perhaps sensing my resolve was stronger than usual, his pleas were interspersed with emails, over 3,000 of them laden with verbal assaults. It took me 13 months to report him to the police. Why? Because I was trauma bonded. Why? Because I was afraid of what would happen next. I didn't want him to get worse. He would say in his emails things like, your children will never want to be with you. Everyone will know who you really are. You are unlovable. Whew. And then a few emails saying I was a soulmate and begging me to come back. It was usually about 10 out of 300 a month. Had the post-separation abuse had not been so bad, I might have gone back to him. It has to get really bad sometimes for a victim to understand that they're in danger. That's how strong a trauma bond can be. And this is why children will often align. And of course, when victims are relying upon their abusers financially, the loss seems immeasurable. I did leave with the items in the trunk of my car. I was locked out of the family home and determined at some point with a 17-year-old child who was indoctrinated against me that the best way to show her clarity was to get the hell out of there. Abusers, as I said, are often so overwhelmed with abandonment and feelings of shame that they can't let the victim go. If the victim disengages, they usually become hell-bent on exacting revenge, and the children do become the ideal weapon. We certainly know that the manifestations of these traumas are often result in misdiagnoses of ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and conduct disorder. Ideally, we would have a diagnosis of developmental trauma disorder. Additionally, we see so much anxiety in these children and depression, which manifests in disassociation or significant anger. Self-harm, eating disorders, and of course, suicidal ideation are not uncommon. Coercive control is as old as the beginning of time. Individuals and groups of individuals in position of power wield this power in harmful ways to dominate. Dr. Stark did call it a liberty crime. The reality is that we begin to heal when our children begin to heal. Recognizing their experiences of abuse as not separate from, but happening simultaneously as the protective parents' experiences gives us a new lens into the world, a coercive control lens. The intergenerational trauma can be prevented. I truly believe protective parents have so much to offer when given support, validation, and the resources that they need. My children did come back to me, and for that I am eternally grateful. I allowed them to feel the pain, and I allowed them to feel his wrath, and that was what helped them to see and understand who he really is. So I thank you all for listening to me today and for doing the work that you're doing. We need a sea of allies in this world. This trauma that children are experiencing in these family systems is unfortunately creating further harm in further generations. It's time to end it. It's time to actually do something about this and to call out the abusive behaviors. It's time to pivot to the perpetrator. Thank you.
I'm her biggest fan. I'm completely dorking out on her. I follow her on social media, and she has changed my healing. I didn't really know what I was dealing with until I heard it, and it applies, and it's rampant, and I'm beyond grateful. And if you have the opportunity to get her book, this thing changed my life. Good afternoon. My name is Kara Carlson. I was raised right here in Oklahoma City. I wish I could tell you that I grew up in a loving home, but I didn't. And without even realizing it, I carried that legacy into adulthood when I married a man who slowly, quietly, and systematically dismantled my life. Abuse didn't begin with a slap. It began the only way I had ever known it, with coercive control, manipulation, isolation, and psychological torment that rewired my entire reality. By the time I reached my breaking point, I'd become the silent survivor you didn't see. Too ashamed, too financially trapped, and too afraid to ask anyone for help. I didn't think I was worth saving. By the time I finally escaped, I was shattered in ways I didn't even have words for. The good people at Palomar saw what I couldn't see, and they guided me to the YWCA. I will forever be grateful for that partnership because they made sure I wasn't alone. They connected me to people, to advocates, to resources who truly understood the kind of hell I had survived and the kind of hell I was living. I remember walking into the YWCA looking the total opposite of what I thought abuse looked like. I was wearing a mink coat, Ugg boots, and I was not dragging a suitcase, but I had a wagon with me. I now have coined it my weirdo wagon. The wagon held everything I had left in the world. They had one shot. They needed to believe me. In that wagon, the physical evidence of violence and binders filled with coercive control that had swallowed my life piece by piece. At the time, I didn't even have the language for what I had survived. But the advocates at the YWCA did. They saw me, they believed me, they gave me the words. Every single service I received, unprecedented support, friendship, advocacy. They went to court with me. They developed safety plans as the post-separation abuse evolved. It was free. Free because someone in this room, like you, chose to give. Today, I am not the woman dragging the wagon. I'm a woman who stands in courtrooms, in the Capitol, and community spaces advocating for survivors because donors funded my healing. The truth is simple. Providing safety and healing takes resources. It's expensive. And when those resources aren't there, the price survivors pay can be fatal. So today, I'm asking you to give. Give like someone's life depends on it, because it does. Your gift doesn't just fund a service, it funds a turning point. My turning point started with that wagon full of trauma, and it led me here, speaking, advocating, living a life I once thought was already over. That is what your generosity makes possible. If you are someone in this room who can give more than the $100, give $1,000, give $5,000, give even $10,000 as a gift or pledge that you can pay out over time. Please do, it matters. Your generosity doesn't just change one life. It accelerates the freedom of women who cannot wait. I'd also like to ask you to consider taking one more step, a critical step. Become a monthly donor. A one-time gift helps, of course. A monthly gift transforms women. A monthly gift keeps beds open, keeps advocates funded, keeps crisis lines answered, keeps doors open on the very worst day of their life. Your monthly gift becomes a steady lifeline for the women who think no one sees her. The silent survivor, the one who looks fine on the outside but is barely hanging on, she is why your gift matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you beyond measure for believing women like me. I'm beyond grateful to be here. I'm beyond grateful to be a YWCA girl. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. C. and Kara, for your courage today. Hearing these stories remind us why listening and acting matter. Today, I hope each of you, when your table host invited you, talked to you about committing to donate $100 minimum with your table hostess. That's powerful, but it really is just the beginning, as Kara stated a few minutes ago. If you're able, please consider giving more. Just think, if 100 people gave $1,000 or more, we could provide 1,250 hours of crisis intervention for those who need it the most. As Kara mentioned, recurring donations provide a predictable source of income, that ongoing operational expense. The YWCA can count on those recurring donations to fund their mission and continue their life-saving services. We will leave the slide on the screens that shows some of the impact you can make with those monthly gifts.
Table hosts, now is the time to pass out your donation envelopes from your packet. Guests, take a few moments to fill out your envelope. We cannot stress enough how important it is that you fill out the donation envelope completely and legibly. This is how they ensure you receive your tax receipt and receive the email invite for next year's luncheon. So those email addresses are imperative, along with your mailing address. After your envelope is filled out, please return it to your table host.
Now, we know you can multitask, so while you are filling out your cards, we want to pull the winners of those fantastic raffles you entered before the program began. If your number is called, please stand so that we will know that we have a winner. You have to be present to win. You will keep your winning ticket and then use it to, at the table, at the raffle table, to exchange for the prize that you have won. That will save us some time from trying to get to you during this.
Okay, here we go.
You want to draw?
Sure, this is the fun part, everybody. Okay, this is for Paws and Patterns, the cat-themed wall hanging quilt tapestry. Okay, 0147747. 0147747.
Do we have a bingo? We have a bingo.
Yay!
All right.
Good job.
This is Little Moments, Big Memories, the Certificate for Legacy Children's Portrait. Number 0147745. 01.
Oh, we have a winner.
All right,
Yay.
just shout it out. Yeah.
Right over here. Okay, we have Through the Looking Glass, the Alice in Wonderland themed wall hanging quilt tapestry. Zero 0147854. 0147854. Do we have one? Oh, yay! Good job for having this number.
I seem to be getting all the portraits. This one is the Timeless Memories, the Certificate for Legacy Family Portrait.
Oh, that's cool.
0147757. 0147 at the back.
Yay!
All right.
Congratulations. Okay, this is the Winter Wonder Wreath. It's extra large wreath with bells. I actually made it. I did. That's me. And we are going to find the lucky winner. Okay, 0147540. 0147540.
Right there in the middle.
Oh, fun! Congratulations.
The Festive Flora Wreath. It's the wreath with the 3 large flowers. 0147736. 7736. All right.
Yay! Okay, Wood to Flame, a charging chainsaw and grill set. And it is 0147823. 0147823. Good job. Way to be.
Oklahoma Skies, 3 prints. The Lightning Strike from Lake Hefner, the Oklahoma City Sunset from Okarche, the Sunset and Ducks also from Lake Hefner. 0147524. 7524. 7, 5.
Over here, right here.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, peace, hope, and joy. This is the Ray Dunn Mary Birdhouse. Oh, these are really cute. The Ray Dunn Peace Birdhouse, the Christmas House, the Peace House, the Hope House, and here we go. Okay, 014-7857. 014-7857. We have a winner back here. Okay, congratulations.
The Jenny DeMilo painting by Kayla Miller, 014-7807. 7807. Over there, thank you.
Okay, the Santa Boots of Cheer. It's a holiday-themed centerpiece, Santa Boots. And let's see who won this. 014-7964. 014-7964. Okay, congratulations.
The London Winter Cafe, the limited edition London Winter Cafe handbag and coin purse. 014-7979. 7979. All right.
Okay, this is a good one, guys. Eyes on the prize, a certificate for a free eye exam and a pair of sunglasses. Includes most prescriptions. Okay, we have 014-7735. 014-7735. Congratulations.
This is the Groom to Perfection package with the shaver, the multi-groom, and the grooming collection. 014-7726. 7726. Got it.
Okay, good deal. Okay, ladies, this is our last one, okay? Courtside Collective, a painting or a photo signed by Isaiah Hartenstein. Okay, here we go. 014-7580. 014-7580. Right there? Right there? Yes?
Do it again.
Yes?
Say,
Okay. I think we have a winner. Is that correct? Okay, perfect.
thank you. Give us just 60 seconds. Thank you all for joining us today and supporting survivors through your generosity and your presence. Before we dismiss, I do want to share one bit of unfortunate news. We're kind of back to some of those old supply chain issues. And the books that we had hoped to have for today's signing from Dr. C were delayed at the distribution center and did not arrive in time. So we have posted QR codes at the exits so you can easily purchase her books online. She is willing to visit with you should you wish to secure an autograph while you are here. It just can't be in the books. Ladies, it is so important that we continue to do the work that we hear about when we come together for this luncheon. I have been taking for the last year and a half some jobs that call it an interim, but we don't have time for an interim when it comes to domestic violence and our providing of resources. I liked what I heard from Kara today, and I'm going to change my thinking that my donation is not about providing resources, but it's about providing those turning points for the women who are seeking help. And I also want to remember something that Dr. C said, and I hope that I can approach my work in this field with respectful audacity. Thank you all for being here today.